Let us learn a beautiful Sicha together. Vayishlach Yutes Kislev. It's based on two Farbrengens. A Farbrengen that the Rebbe had Tafshin Chav Gimel and Shabbos Parshas Vayishlach, 1962, and a Farbrengen of Yutes Kislev, Tafshin Chav Hey, 1964. And very powerful Nekudas. The original Vayishlach Sicha was more on the Rashi and the Mefarshim that we're going to start explaining with. And the Yutes Kislev is the second part of the Sicha, the majority of the Sicha, which is the Chassidus element. And in the version of the edited version that we have, the Sicha the Rebbe gave out, it's a combination of these two. So let's go in the order of the Sicha. My father-in-law said, in the year Tafshin Gimel, 1942, 1943. So this was Vayishlach time. He said that in Vayishlach Tafkuf Lamed Gimel, that Vayishlach Tafkuf Lamed Gimel, which is a few days before the Mezritch Magid passed away, the last Shabbos that the Mezritch Magid was in this world, as he was on his bed, together with surrounded by his Chevraya Kadisha, his holy students, he says, Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim. That's the beginning of the Pasha. And Rashi explains what's Malachim, Malachim Mamish, literally Malachim. And the Mezritch Magid said the Mamish of the Malachim he sent to Esav, but the Ruchnius he kept with him. Asks the Rebbe, we have to ask a few questions. The fact that Yaakov sent Malachim Dafka, even though technically you're not allowed to use Malachim, the Rebbe brings from the Or HaChaim, you're not allowed to use Malachim Stam. It's because he wanted to elevate Esav. That's what Chassidus explains. So therefore, he sent Malachim. So why wouldn't he send the Mamish al Malachim? If you're going to refine them, the main thing that is going to refine Esav is the Ruchnius of the Malachim, not the Gashmius of the Malachim. And Bechlal, the Rebbe says in the fundamental, it's not understood. How can you separate between the Mamish of Malachim, which is the Guf, and the Ruchnius, their Nefesh, and say that the Mamish was sent to Esav and the Ruchnius was sent to Yaakov? Even by a Ben Adam, by a human being, and by an animal, it's pretty much impossible that the guf cannot do anything without its nefesh inside, without the soul. Otherwise, it's just a dead guf. How much more so malachim, which they're fundamentally just a nefesh. And the Rebbe in footnote 5 goes in an interesting insight, basically explains something that he brought in Kudasichas Chelakei. You might say that there was a reason we had to refine Esav Dafka through the Mamish of the Malachim. So if that's the case, that you need a Dafka the Gashmis, then why send Malachim? Send Basar Adam, which are much more Gashmis, human beings. And even though you're going to say that we explained in Chelak Hey that he wasn't allowed to send human Malachim because halachically you're not allowed to put somebody in danger, and there was a risk of danger. So that's why he sent Malachim, but still he could have sent spies. So the question is, why didn't Yaakov send human beings if he has to send the Mamish or the Malachim? So the question is, there has to be something that he sent the Malachim specifically, not human beings, because they had to do a birur, they had to do a refinement. So why did he send the Mamish of the Malachim and not the Nefesh of the Malachim? Also, the Rebbe says, based on what Rashi said, Malachim Mamish, what's Rashi coming to say? He's coming to negate the pshat that says that he sent human beings, and he's saying that he sent literally Malachim. But according to the Magid, what he's saying is Malachim Mamish is to say, no, he didn't send the spirituality of Malachim, he sent the physicality of Malachim, which seems to be almost opposing. Rashi is focusing on the fact it wasn't physical, it was spiritual, and Magid is focusing on the fact it wasn't spiritual, it was physical. So the Rebbe says, based on this, you can't say that the Magid was trying to say that Yaakov only sent the Mamish without the Ruchnius, but rather he sent the Malachim in such a way that even when they came to Esav and they were there, begufam uvenafsham, they did not separate themselves from their connection to Yaakov. And it was therefore as if they only came to Esav beguf and with their Mamish. In other words, they felt, there was a hargasha, they felt within themselves that their real place is by Yaakov. That's their fundamental. As the Baal Shem Tov taught us, where a person's will is, that's where you are. Where was their will? By the Nasi, by their leader, by Yaakov. And the fact that they have to be by Esav is just secondary, and that's because the Shlichus of Yaakov. Just like the Guf doesn't have a Metzias without the Nebuch, so too, their Shlichus, they have no independent Metzias other than Yaakov. Says the Rebbe, so based on this, it's not only that the Magid does not negate Rashi's Pshat, no, he explains it. How can you send Malachim Mamish to accomplish the refinement, the birur in Esav, that's dafke when their nefesh, their ruchnius, is connected to Yaakov and does not get changed in whatever circumstance they are, even when they're Esav. So what the Magid said, that only the Mamish was sent, points out the Nekuda that Rashi said of Mamish. In other words, that he made the Malachim Mamish, real Malachim. What's a real Malach? That even when he's by Esav, he stays true to who he is. And now that we finished this little Nekuda, the Rebbe takes it to a whole other level. Let's understand, says the Rebbe, when was this Torah said? It was said the last Shabbos before he was Nistalik, which means that there was a form of tzava, a final will, and a general avodah and avodas Hashem. And because we know that amongst the students of the Magid, the Alter Rebbe was the most beloved, and the Rebbe brings from the letter of Rabbi Yitzchak Mebarditchev that says, Rabbi Ditchev says, that you mentioned that our teacher, Menachem Mendel Mahadaduk, was very precious in the eyes of our Rebbe, I didn't hear that. But what I could tell you, and I could testify, is that my Mechutin, the Alter Rebbe, their grandchildren married each other, was very precious in the eyes of the Magid, and he used to talk incredibly about his shebach, about his praise. So it has to be that it was a message for the Alter Rebbe, especially what the Barditchever said, that we all ate from the same pot, and the Litvak, the Alter Rebbe, because he used to be called that, took the choicest. In other words, that the Haidah that was said the last, just before his Istalkus, had to reach all the students, but how much more so the choicest of the student, the Meyaseh of Chassidus Chabad, the founder of Chassidus Chabad. And based on the fact that the Magid told Alter Rebbe that Yutas Kislev is our Yemei Lula, because Yutas Kislev was the Istalkus of the Magid, and 26 years later was when the Alter Rebbe went out of jail. So you must say that there's a strong connection to this day, Yutas Kislev, the day that they were redeemed, that he was redeemed, and the day that the Magid was installed. So what is Yutas Kislev all about? And that's where the Sicha really takes off now. Now, even though Yafutzim and Sechutza makes sense, spreads the Chassidus everywhere, but because we know that Yidden are connected to Torah and Yidden and Torah are one, must say when there's a Chiddush in Torah, there's a Chiddush in the Yidden as well. In other words, when something changes in Torah, there must be a change in the Yidden as well. So if there was a change in Afotas HaMayanas, there's an impact on the Yidden. And that's something that was also changed in Yutas Kislev. Mayanas, the well springs that Yutas Kislev started going out, that refers to Nishmas D'Oraisa and Neshama of the Torah. Before Yutas Kislev, what was revealed? Only the Guf of the Torah, the Guf of D'Oraisa, the Guf, the physical. Not the physical, but the external. Nigla the Torah, but Pnimius Torah, which is Neshama of Torah, was hidden. Just like the difference between a Guf and a Neshama. The Guf is something you could see, and the Neshama, not only can't you understand it, but you can't even grasp it within your mind. Not only can't you see it, you can't grasp it within your mind. The only thing you could do is understand that it exists. You see that the person's body is functioning, so you know that there's a neshama. But what's the chiddush of Yutas Kislev? That then, even this incredible deep level has now become, in Avon Avana Vasagid, you can understand it, just like you can understand Nigla. And this chiddush of Torah that we revealed in the neshama of the Torah also changed within Yisrael. That the Yid's neshama, which by mitzadatzma, by default is hidden, will shine in throughout the whole guf. In other words, this had an impact not only in the Torah, but it had an impact on the Yid, because he saw the Vayishlach, kulachad, Yid and Torah once. If there was a transformation within Torah, there was a transformation within the Yid. Says the Rebbe. In general, the way the neshama impacts the guf, there are two general ways, and then he's going to split the second way into two. What's the two ways? The neshama reveals itself in a way that it has control in the guf, and the guf gives in, but nevertheless, you still feel the guf is an independent reality. Bays, number two, that the neshama is revealed so much that the guf is not a metzias, and that is where the neshama truly shines with the guf. just like the nefesh habahamis, or nefesh hachiyunis, the nefesh that keeps us alive. You can't separate and say that the guf is one thing and the neshamas and the nefesh habahamis is something else. But because it's the chayus of the guf, it's ultimate unity. And it's not as if the nefesh has to command the guf to do something. It happens by default. So too, the neshama, by a yid, atam kliyim adam, we are similar to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that our chayus hagashmi is from the nefesh alikis. And the Rebbe says, even though in the footnote, he says, even though the famous statement in Tanya, that by the Beinani, the nefesh habahamis is he, ha'adam atzmei, that is the person. Nevertheless, in the deeper level, in the true level, amitas hachayus, imi nefesh alikis. So that the neshama should be able to accomplish everything it has to do in this world. Tefillin sits, it's stuck, it's only through the physical body. So the guf is only existing to fulfill the neshama's goal. In other words, the whole tachlis, the whole goal of the metzias of a yid is only to make a place for Hashem, Mishkan lo yisparach v'asal yiminu shachanti b'seicham. The yid has no independent existence. He's just Ezer Yishak Shera, what's a refined kosher woman, someone who does the will of her husband, and more so, whatever a woman acquires, the husband acquires. In other words, not only does she agree to give over everything to her husband, but she does it in a way that's automatic. Whatever she acquires, he acquires. So too, whatever the yid does, he's the wife of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, goes automatically to Hashem. And says the Rebbe, even those people who have not reached the level of being a Ishak Shera to Hashem, they're not at that level. Nevertheless, they're an Eved. Because Reishis Avodah Vikra Shosha, the foundation of the Avodah, at least Perek Mamalaf and Tanya, is to be an Eved. Now, even an Eved, Mashakana Eved Kana Rabbi, whatever an Eved acquires goes to the Rav. So not only is it that the Eved doesn't rebel against his master, not only that, that he has to give permission, etc., but it happens automatically. Everything goes to the master. So too by a Yid, everything goes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, regardless of you see yourself as the Eved or Ishak Sheda. Now, these two levels in the way the neshama reveals, number one, that the neshama only controls the guf, but the guf is an independent reality, and that the guf is no metzias, fits the two statements, whatever you do should be l'shem shamayim, and which is something that the Rebbe explores much more in the earlier halakim of the Sichas. As we know, the difference between these two avodas is kol masecha yu l'shem shamayim means it's still your actions, kol masecha, it's your life. But you do it with the right intention. B'chol v'checha de'eu means that there is no independence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, within my actions, I'm not only doing with intention, I'm finding Hashem within it. And that's how I discover Hashem, that's how I have das for Hashem. In other words, you would have thought that the only way to reach das of Hashem is through Kedusha, learning Torah and Kiyum mitzvahs, but how can you do it through doing things that are just living, eating, drinking, etc., business? And that's the pshat chol v'chechadeu, that the eating itself has to be a kedusha and a mitzvah. Not only that it leads to something positive, it itself is a mitzvah. Like Achilas Shabbos, or this mitzvah, Achilas Kodshim, they itself are a mitzvah. And these two avodas of either Kol Masechi L'Shem Shamayim, level 1, and B'chol v'chechadeu, level 2, depend on the two ways the neshama reveals itself. When it's only controlling the guf, but the guf is a separate entity, then the avodah is l'shem shamayim. But the guf is still its own entity. But when the neshama is revealed so much that the guf nullifies itself in front of the neshama, then it's b'chol v'chechadeu, because there is no independent at all. Now, says the Rebbe like this. This is where he splits the second level into two levels. Even within b'chol v'chechadeu, there are two levels specifically. One is that even though everything is Kedusha, nevertheless, there's still felt the Gashmius within them. Not the independence of the Gashmius, but there is still Gashmius. Shabbos, it's a mitzvah, that he's enjoying the Shabbos, he enjoys the wine, he enjoys the meat. As the Rebbe says, the famous Hayom Yom, the story that the Baal Shem Tov one time showed to his students, an ox dressed in the clothing of Shabbos, sitting by a table. Now, who was it, this ox? There was a tzaddik that ate the meat to do mitzvah Shabbos, but because he wanted to do the mitzvah so much, he became it. In other words, he didn't do it for the gashmis. He did it because he wanted to do the mitzvah, but he still became the basar. He still became the flesh. And he brings from various sources, from Torah, that food itself, not only the pleasure of it, megashim makes a person more megushim, more physical. So that's level 1. Taka change, but there's still gashmis. Level 2 is that b'chlal nishtok ken gashmis. There is no felt gashmis. Not only because there's so much kedusha, but because the Gashmius becomes 100% Kedusha. And that also depends on the bittul of the guf to the Nefesh HaBahamis. As we know, a healthy body is when you don't feel anything. When you feel something, like he brings from the pasuk, Reishi, my head, if you feel your head, that's a problem. Because you shouldn't feel it. It should be natural. So too by the chayis and the nefesh l'kis, a healthy yid, you don't feel gashmis. There's no gashmis. Everything is nefesh l'kis. Just like eating, everything he does is to bring elikus through this world. And he says, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam. He brings Hashem into this world, into this food, and that's why he's eating it. And there's no gashmis. This is quite a level the Rebbe is expecting us. And so too with business, even though he's talking, negotiating, he's doing what businessmen do, but he's doing b'chol d'achechadeu, just like the story of the Binyamin Kletzker, that he was a businessman in forests and wood and lumber. And one time when he made a cheshbon, when he made a sachaka, when he made the bottom line, he wrote Einin Movade. Because that was everything. That was the whole point of his business was Einin Movade. Now, every single detail in Avodas Hashem that Chassidus demands from us, our Rebbe's paved the way. So too, we know that this was also paved by the Alter Rebbe. Famous story that one time a chashav, a guest, was visiting him, and everybody had split up the jobs of preparing for this guest. The problem is they didn't split up who would give the salt. So everybody poured the salt, and by then the meal was very, very salty. When the food was brought to the Alter Rebbe, and the guest, he ate it. The guest pushed it away. Why didn't you eat? Asked the Alter Rebbe. It's very salty. Says the Alter Rebbe that when he was in Mezritch, he was poil on himself. He achieved the level that he pashut doesn't taste food. Now, even though such a level is only shaykh to the Alter Rebbe, but because the story came to us, and this is something that I've said so many times in the Sichas, if the story comes to us, it must mean a lesson. It means that we have to bring it even within us simple people. And even though we might say we can't reach this level, even at certain times. In other words, the Rebbe said you should try to accomplish at certain times. You say that you can't accomplish certain times. It says, nevertheless, you could be so occupied in ruchnius that you totally neglect it. In other words, instead of losing your taste, be in a different level, a level of ruchnius that you're not going to taste. It says, like the Rebbe says, when you see somebody's very emotional, they don't taste anything. Try to think about the last time you were deeply excited, deeply emotional. You're beyond it. Not you become holy, you're just beyond it. And that's the chiddush of Yitas Kislev, in the Futzah Meinsech Chutza, and how it accomplishes in the person, not only in Torah, but in the person. Yeah, Futzah Meinsech Chutza, there's something the Rebbe said many times, has 2 points. First of all, that the Mayanis themselves, the wellsprings themselves go out. Not only the wellspring stay here and everything flows from it, the wellspring itself goes out, and it goes on the way of Yafutsu, absolute expansion. Nobody and nothing is outside of the realm of its impact. Says the Rebbe, because if there's one place that the Mayanis don't get there, that shows that it's limited. And that's not Yafutsu. And regarding the Avodah of a person, that was regarding the Torah. Regarding the Avodah, each person has the Mayan, which is the Neshama, which comes from the Kisya Kaved, Tahirei. And this Mayan has to be revealed within ourselves, within our life, in every area that we have. Even the areas of Chutzah, things that are out of the realm of the Neshama. And it has to be in a way that the Neshama not only controls the Guf, but the Neshama finds itself within every single thing. And it goes literally to the greatest impact, and that the Neshama goes to the Guf, and the Ofen of Yafutsu goes every single area possible. There's no place of the Guf without the Neshama. Now we can understand with more explanation what the Magid said, Malachim Mamish, that he said it before Yitas Kislev, and the connection to the Alter Rebbe. The Neshama comes to this world is to refine its Guf and its portion in this world, make a dir le'yisparach. That's similar to what Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim, that Yaakov sent messengers to Esav, which was to refinement. And just like the Shlichus of Yaakov to Esav was in the way of Malachim Mamish, so too the Shlichus of us in this world has to be dafka when a person remembers that he's Malachim, that he's a Ruchni, that he's spiritual, and that he's only brings his Mamish out, but in other words, he always stays connected to the source. And because you could refine this world in the way of Kol Masechel L'Shem Shamayim, which is only in the way of control. So the Magid comes, it says, no, the ultimate level is when the Koiches of the Neshama that are dealing with Gashmias are only mamish. In other words, they're buttled they have no identity because their fundamental is they're connected to the neshama, which is beyond all this stuff. In other words, there is no room for ruchnius. Sorry, no room for gashmius at all. And also in the simple meaning of Yafutzim Masech Chutzah to spread chassidus everywhere, the Rebbe's set up that they sent shluchim to various places to spread and reveal the Mayanis Chassidus, and this is Malachim Mamash. In other words, even though we have to do our Shlichus, not only just to do it, to Yotze Zayin, but to do it with the entire soul, Neshama. Nevertheless, we have to make sure that the Chutzah has no impact on us. And how do we do that? We make sure that we're connected to the Mayan, and that is that even when we're Chutzah, we remember that all we're doing is the Shlichus of the Mishalech. And that's what the Magid taught us about Shluchim, that only the Guf and the Mamish should be in the Shlichus of Chutzah, but the Ruchnius has to stay connected to the Mishalech, to Yaakov. In other words, it should be penetrate within us when we do our work, that our work with Chutzah is simply doing what the Rebbe wants, what Yaakov wants, without any side agendas. Just like the Guf, that's entire intention, existence is the Ruchnius and the Neshama Shabbat. And then you stay Ruchni, you can stay connected to the Mishalech. And as the Alter Baal Shem Tov said, and we mentioned at the beginning of the Sicha, wherever your will is, that's where you are. And fulfilling this idea of making sure that's Malachim Mamish, that we stay connected, allows us to transform everything of the Chutzah into Mayanis, and we reach the level of Vayishlach Hashem Amlucha, the incredible level of transformation that's going to happen with the coming of Mashiach of Emasei Kosimar,